My name is Will, and we're going to be continuing our podcast, Cabra Matters, because Cabra matters to God and to us. And I have here with me today Hien, one of the pastors at Cabra Anglican Church. Our regular host, Pastor Rob, is on leave today, so it will only be me and Hien for this episode. And we're continuing on our podcast about Gregory Kukel's book, Tactics by Gregory Kukel. And that's part of our campaign for this year. Let's go to one in 2021. We'll be encouraging our congregation members to be praying for that one person to come to know the Lord Jesus Christ, and to be connecting with that person, like taking the initiative and intentionally connecting with them. And then hoping that one way or another, they might hear the gospel proclaimed sometime this year. And so that's our hope. That is our campaign for this year, that people might have their lives transformed through Jesus Christ for God's glory. And so as we're going through this book, it has been pretty helpful. Let us know if we've raised some interesting things that you want to interact with. We'll discuss further. You can email us at comms@cabra.church, or leave a comment, I guess, on the YouTube video. But we're up to chapters 4 and 5 now, and we're still discussing the Columbo tactic. There are 3 steps in the Columbo tactic. Step 1 is gathering information. Step 2 is reversing the burden of proof. And step 3 is about getting out of sticky situations. I can't remember the technical term for that, but it's about getting out of difficult situations. But we're going to be covering step 1 and 2 this time, and it's in chapters 4 and 5. Now, here, I've got a question for you. Why was the Great Wall built?
I don't know, Will. Why was the Great Wall built? To keep out rabbits or something?
Well, that's a possible explanation, isn't it?
Yeah.
But does it mean it's believable?
No, I don't think. Well, yeah, it's plausible.
Yeah, plausible,
but not probable.
Maybe to keep I don't know, to keep warm. I don't know, or to keep aliens out. Maybe there were aliens there or something. Oh well, speaking of which, there's news about like UFOs and stuff, and how there's like lots of different sightings of it, and people have all these interesting theories as to what these unidentified objects in the sky are. Now, do we believe in every single theory out there? Probably not, eh? But no. Sometimes we have to weigh it up, I think, and that's part of what today's about. When someone makes an alternative truth claim, we need to think critically about it. And usually when people ask questions, questions are usually pretty loaded. So, an example in the Bible is Jesus dealing really well with loaded questions. One example that I can think of is when, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law asked Jesus, by whose authority do you do these things? Jesus was at the temple flipping tables over and stuff and telling people to scram. And then they ask him, by whose authority do you do this? And then Jesus' response was another question. He's like, oh, well, how about I ask you this question? Where does John's baptism come from? Is it from God or is it from man? Right. And then that question kind of stumped the people, because they had to think, oh, it's a trap, right? Because if they say one answer, well, Jesus could come back at them with another response. And like, if you say from God, then he says, why don't you believe them? But then if you say from man, then the people who believe is from God would kind of go after them. And then so Jesus exposed that questions are loaded, and you got to tread carefully, or statements of truth are loaded. And so, when we're talking to our friends or family members who do not yet know Jesus, they might say some things that might be loaded. And and that kind of is a segue to a story, like a personal story of mine. I was meeting up with a friend who's not Christian, and he agreed to read the Bible with me, which was pretty interesting. I think he started kind of going to church, and he wanted to explore Christianity, so we read the Bible together. And then one day, after reading the Bible, I think we were going through Ephesians, and he asked me, the people who don't believe in Jesus go to hell, right? And then, guess what I did here?
You answered it.
Pretty much. pretty much just answered it like straight out. Yeah, and then I just gave him the answer like, yeah, well, we have the Bible, which is God's word to us. And then I explained pretty much two ways to live. Everyone sinned against God, and God's a holy God, and he's a just God, so he judges according to his perfect righteousness and blah blah blah. And then Hebrews 9:27, everyone's destined to die once and then face judgment. And he didn't really seem happy with the answer. Yeah, but then after that, after my answer, he didn't seem happy, but he kind of didn't press, and then he changed the topic, and that's it. And then I don't know. I thought I did okay. Like I gave him the biblical answer. Um, yeah, but then later on, I kind of realized, like, as we we're friends and stuff, right? So we talk about other things and so on. And then I kind of pieced some things together, and I realized that his mum, like, passed away not too long, not too long before he asked that question. And then that was when he kind of like all dropped on me that he's probably thinking about where his mum is at.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think the answer was pretty hard to take, right?
Mm.
And it would have been a lot better if I, you know,
Got
asked.
to know where he was coming from.
Yeah,
And I think chapter 4 and chapter 5 sort of helps us to think in that way. Instead of just straight out answering the question.
Yeah.
But really just think, all right, where is the person coming from with that answer?
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, with that question that they're asking.
Yeah, so it could come from either when they're asking a question,
Yeah,
or if you're talking to them and then they make a statement, right? Like, oh, don't all Christians or all people go to heaven? Or like,
all paths leads to God.
yeah, all paths leads to God, or hasn't science disproved Christianity or something? Yeah. So I think it may come in the form of a question, or it may come in the form of a statement. And then I think the Columbo tactic helps us to go, well, take a step back, don't walk into that and answer it straight away, but get to know where they're coming from. And I think that's really valuable for us. And I learned that lesson. I made the mistake a few times, and I'm still making mistakes, but now at least I have this this reminder in me, like, oh, I should ask them where they're coming from first, and kind of get to know the background of why they're asking these questions. So yeah, and I think so. That's the first step: gathering information, and gathering information is important because you don't want to misunderstand the person you're talking to, and you don't want to misrepresent them. So, like, for example, once they ask you a question, you might have an idea of what they actually mean, and then you answer that, but then that's actually not answering the question, right? Has that ever happened to you? Of course it has, right? Yeah, and then the other one is you don't want them to misunderstand themselves, and I think that happens to me a lot. When I meet up with my mentor, I might say something, and he goes, "Oh, what do you mean by that?" And then I have to pause and then think a bit more about actually what do I mean. And then I might be inconsistent in the way I use my words or whatever. And then it helps me clarify, and it helps me, and it's a good way to point out a mistake in my thinking without pointing it out to me, but asking me a question and me realizing it myself. Yeah. So that's what I got out of the first chapter. Yeah.
And I think also gathering information also helps you show that you take interest in other person instead of just pushing your own ideas onto them, but really hearing them out, hearing what they're saying, and gathering that kind of background information in a way that just helps them feel like you care.
Yeah.
Care enough to listen to them and listen to their opinions and their ideas.
Yeah, because I think
correcting it straight away.
Yeah, because I guess like what you're saying is like behind every question or statement there's a person.
Yeah.
Right, that holds to that statement or question, and asking them questions and finding out more is dealing with the person, not just a theoretical question.
That's right, and you're right too. When someone makes a statement, those statements doesn't mean much in the sense of that has no foundation. But when you you really ask them why they made that statement and how did they come to the conclusion of having that statement. It just really helps them clarify, okay, is my thinking wrong, or am I right, or do I have the proper foundation set upon before making these statements? Because statements are made in society just because they're good catchlines, and not necessarily true.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like love is love.
God is love.
Like love is love.
Love is love. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Or Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
There's statements that are made, but yeah, of course, Black Lives Matter. So does everyone. Everyone's lives matter.
Yeah. But then if you kind of like show a bit of resistance to that movement, they're like, oh, so you're against Black lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it's always good to ask, oh, what do you actually mean by Black Lives Matter, or what do you actually mean by love is love?
Yeah.
And then they're able to explain their position a bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next chapter is about reversing the burden of proof. So I guess there's a difference between an opinion, an argument, and an argument. An opinion is pretty much just a point of view, but an argument is like something that's backed up by reason. Yeah? And so if people can give out opinions, like God doesn't exist or evolution is true or whatever, they can have an opinion, but then they need to. Everyone who gives an opinion is their responsibility to back it up, right? But I think the temptation from our end when we're hit with someone's opinion that's against our views is to defend our view and attack their opinion. But then the Columbo tactic kind of tells us to not instinctively react that way, but to get them to give reasons for their opinion, right? Yeah, and I think that's a really good tactic, because if you're still asking questions, in the book's words, you're in the driver's seat, so you're in control of the conversation, and it also means that you're not on the hot seat where your views are being critiqued. Yeah, right. If you're asking them questions, is their views being tested? And then if they try to put it back to you, you go, well, I haven't put my opinion out forward yet. I'm still trying to find out what you're on about. You know what I mean? And then it's still on them.
And I think it's a bit easier to take that burden away, whereas you're always trying to think what the next line or what's the next argument or what thing. But but if you do ask to show ask the other person to show the burden of proof of their statements or opinion, then it's their job to think, to back it up with what they said. Yeah.
So like, for example, I think quite recently someone asked me, I think it was after church or something, and they were talking about resurrection, and then this person said, oh, maybe it's not maybe resurrection isn't the only way, like isn't the only thing that happens after death. Like there's also reincarnation. And then thankfully this time round I kind of like had a better response than just to go, nah, it's not reincarnation, it's resurrection, because blah 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 blah, right? I asked the person, oh, why do you think reincarnation is real? And then they were like, oh, because there's people who say that they've been XYZ in the past life, and they know. And I'm like, okay, well, is it reasonable to believe these people? And then they're like, oh, I don't know. And then that was good. I think that was a good outcome, because then it kind of made them think, oh, well, yeah, is it actually reasonable to believe in these people who claim to have been reincarnated when they just said that they were without any kind of proof? So I think that's a good thing. That's a good, I guess, tool to have, to ask people to go, yeah, like, how did you come to this conclusion? Like, how did you get there? What reasons do you think makes this statement like, believable, reasonable to believe? Yeah. And I think another thing that I found helpful in the book is that he makes it clear that an alternative explanation about something is not a refutation of your position. So given my example again, like just because they have an alternative view of what happens after you die, so for example, resurrection versus reincarnation, just because there's an alternative doesn't mean that it actually refutes your position, right? So similar to what we started off with, like why did they build the Great Wall? Just because you can think of a million like reasons why the Great Wall was built doesn't mean it actually refutes the true reason why it was built. And I think that's good, because sometimes we feel threatened, right? When someone comes up with an alternative, when they go, oh, but it could be like this, or it could be like that. It's so easy to come up with alternatives. And then we feel threatened because they're like, oh yeah, haven't thought of that, right? But I guess if someone comes up with an alternative, the book tells us to then ask some questions about it.
Yes.
How did you come to this?
And show the reason why you believe or have that opinion.
Yeah.
And also in chapter 5, it talks about things that are the 3 P's, was it? Possible,
Yep.
Plausible, and probable.
Yep.
Yeah, to me, when I was reading that, I had to slow down and really get that around my head into, okay, the possibility, the probability, plausibility, and the probability of things or of opinions being true or not true. And yeah, what did you say when we were talking before, Will, that it helps the explanation of to think through those 3 things?
Yeah. So when someone comes up with an alternative explanation, just think about these questions. Like, firstly, is it possible? So that kind of means like, can it happen? Is it possible for this to happen? So why was the Great Wall built? To keep the bunnies out? Well, is that possible? Yeah, it's possible. Okay, then you get to the next step, right? Which is it plausible? And plausible means, is it reasonable? Is it reasonable for that explanation to be true? And so you go, well, they built the Great Wall. It's like, meters high and meters wide and like hundreds of kilometers long, and people died building this wall. Okay. So with those facts in mind, is it reasonable for them to build that wall of that magnitude just to keep bunnies out? Probably not. Right. And then so with that's a tool to help us assess alternative views. And then you can even ask those questions. Like, oh yeah, why do you think they built the wall? Like, okay, they built it like this. Oh, do you think, but then didn't people die building that wall? Like, do you think that's reasonable for that to happen? Like building a wall just to keep bunnies out at the cost of human life? Yeah. And then, yeah, maybe, yeah. And then the last one is it a probable? And so that means, is it the best explanation that we have given the facts that we have? So, it's an argument for the resurrection, that it is the best explanation of the facts that we have: the empty tomb, Christ died, and the witness of the disciples, how their lives have changed, and the witness of the Apostle Paul, who was against Christianity, and his life changed because he met the Lord Jesus, and so on and so forth. So after putting all those facts together, it is the best explanation of the evidence that we have. So that's why we believe in the resurrection. I guess using that as an example. Yeah.
And so yeah, the book ends with those kind of 3 things. And I was just thinking, how do I use or get better at using these 2 tactics in my conversation with people? And I think I was just saying that I need to practice it. I need to just do it and really get better, because the first time I use these tactics, it won't be a success. But if I keep using it again and again, then I get better at it.
Yeah, definitely. And we don't only use it with people who are not Christian, or when we're talking about like spiritual things or whatever. I guess we can use it when we talk to people normally, right?
Yeah, I think so. And then we can also, when people do come to me for advice or for certain issues, I can use these Columbo tactics to really hear them out and hear their side of the story instead of just give them my opinion or what they did wrong or what they did right. And
Yeah.
just to hear, okay, why did you come to that? Why did this person say this to you? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really helps us. Not only, I think you're right. Like, not only in talking to non-Christians and dealing with different views, or not even just talking about theoretical things and dealing with different views of the Bible, for example, right? Different doctrine and theology. But we are in each other's lives, and we talk to each other, and we're a family of God. And when someone asks for advice on some things, or we talk about things, then it's better to drill down deeper as to, what do you mean by this? Why did you react like that? Or why do you think this happened? And then that gives us a way to go, oh well, then another good question to ask is, what does God's word say?
Yeah.
What does the Bible say about this? And then you can look into it together. So I think this has application, not only in how we try to connect with outsiders, but also how we connect with each other. Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you made.
Yeah. And that's what I really appreciate about these two tactics, is that I can use it in all aspects of my life.
Yeah, because he values the person.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, it values the person and it gets that person talking and hearing the person out.
Yeah, and if you're patient and curious, then you get to know more about the person. Then you know how to better pray for them, I guess. As well.
And so also, if you do it well, I think the person will come back to you repeatedly because they feel like they can have a person who hears them, who understands them, and who has their interest at heart.
This sounds like a Columbo tactic is pretty much active listening.
Yes, it is. Active listening.
but just putting out in steps.
Yeah, and spelling it out clearly for us so that we can actually use it and be aware of it.
Yeah, I guess I would just leave with this as well. I was reading an article on the Gospel Coalition, and the article is titled "The Lines of Grace." Right, and so if you're interested, you can kind of look it up as well. It's about this guy getting a tattoo, and his tattoo was a picture of a sailboat with sails, like full of wind, and then the line is, "It is well with my soul." Right, so it's a bit like a hymn reference. Yeah, "It is well with my soul." And then so he goes to the tattoo artist, and the tattoo artist is like, "Oh yeah, look at the design, blah blah blah." And then it was a 4-hour appointment to get the tattoo done because it's a nice design. And the tattoo artist was tattooing, and then they were talking about, oh, what's the importance, what's the significance of this tattoo? And then the person was able to explain, that because of my confidence in God, because he is loving, blah blah blah, that it doesn't matter what happens in my life, I can say it is well with my soul. And then the tattoo artist, she was like, "Oh, I think you're the first Christian I've ever met." and then he Columboed her. It's like, "Oh, are you sure you never met a Christian before?" And then she was able to kind of just go, "Oh yeah, maybe there are Christians, but like you seem more like a genuine Christian because you were able to explain clearly why you believe." And then she started talking about her own life, and then it was clear to the guy getting a tattoo that, things aren't well in her soul. And then they started talking, and then she asked him a question like, "What do you think about gay marriage?" And that's like, boom, loaded question, right?
Yeah.
What do you do? And thankfully, he Columboed her. He didn't just answer her straight out. He Columboed her and asked her. This is his response. He's like, "That sounds like it has a backstory of its own. Tell me more." And then she just kind of opened up and told him her life story. And that was good because then he was interested in the person.
Yeah.
By asking the question and not just answering the question as a theoretical thing. And that led to a great conversation. And they became, I think they became friends. And I think that was good. And that I guess he now she has a contact in her life where she knows that this person, is a Christian who has hope, and can talk to the person and doesn't feel like hated by the person, and so on. Yeah, if you have time, listeners, I guess it's a pretty good article to have a read. It's pretty encouraging.
Sounds really good.
Yeah. All right. Do you have anything else to add, Ian?
No, just looking forward to the next step.
Yep.
Step 3.
Step 3.
Yeah.
Yep. 2 reliable rescues, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next one is I think we're doing the next 2 chapters: 2 reliable rescues and using questions to get to a point. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it from us. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you will tune in next week as well, and to hear more from the book Tactics by Gregory Krickle. Till then, see you later.
Bye.